Walk into any UK supermarket and the bread aisle looks innocent enough. Bright packaging, health claims everywhere, promises of freshness and quality. But behind those labels is a disturbing truth the industry doesn't want you to know. I've spent 2 months investigating UK bread brands. I've spoken to former factory workers, analyzed laboratory reports, and interviewed nutritionists. What I discovered will completely change how you shop for bread. Some of these brands you trust, some you feed your children every day. By the end of this video, you'll understand why that needs to stop immediately. I'm counting down from bad to absolutely terrible. Harvest has been around since 1886. They built their reputation on quality. That reputation is now a marketing lie. Their soft white bread costs around £1.30. Look at the ingredients: wheat flour, water, yeast, vegetable oils, salt, sugar, soya flour, emulsifiers E472E and E471, flour treatment agent, preservatives. A former Harvest factory worker told me, the dough goes from mixing to packaged loaves in under 90 minutes. There's no time for proper fermentation, no time for flavor. It's just volume, volume, volume. They use the Chorleywood bread process, high-speed mechanical mixing that replaces time and craftsmanship with intense mechanical energy and chemical additives. Pick up a slice and squeeze it. It compresses to nothing. You're buying air with chemicals. The sugar content is nearly 2 grams per slice. Bread shouldn't be sweet. I left a slice of Harvest soft white and artisan sourdough in identical conditions for 2 weeks. The sourdough developed mold after 5 days, normal for real bread. The Harvest slice, still pristine after 14 days, that's not freshness. That's calcium propionate and preservatives. Your bread isn't fresh, it's chemically embalmed. If you're buying Asda Smart Price bread, you're not saving money. You're paying 65p to slowly destroy your health. This bread is so cheap because it's made from the absolute lowest quality ingredients legally permitted. A miller I spoke with was blunt. Smart Price flour is what we call tail flour. It's the last runs from the mill, flour that's been sitting in storage, flour from wheat that didn't meet quality standards for premium brands. It's cheap because it's substandard. The wheat itself comes from wherever's cheapest globally that week. There's no traceability, no quality control beyond basic food safety. It could be from intensive farms using heavy pesticides. You simply don't know what you're eating. The ingredients list reads like a chemistry experiment. Wheat flour, water, yeast, vegetable oils, sugar, salt, soya flour, emulsifiers E472E and E471, flour treatment agent E300, preservatives calcium propionate. Every single additive is there to compensate for poor ingredients and rushed production. The emulsifiers create artificial texture. The preservatives extend shelf life unnaturally. The treatment agents allow them to use inferior flour. A nutritionist explained it to me this way: value bread isn't food, it's calories with no nutrition. It spikes blood sugar rapidly, provides no satiety, and leaves you hungry within an hour. You'd be better off eating nothing. The calorie-to-nutrition ratio is abysmal. Each slice provides about 80 calories, but almost 0 vitamins, minerals, or fiber. The refining process strips away everything beneficial from the wheat. What's left is pure starch and gluten. I measured the weight of Asda Smart Price bread against the same volume of real bread. The Smart Price loaf weighed 42% less. You're literally buying mostly air. The actual bread content is minimal, which is why you need 3 or 4 slices to feel remotely satisfied. When I toasted a slice, it burned on the outside while remaining raw and doughy inside. The slice curled up and became hard as a brick. This happens because the poor quality ingredients and lack of proper gluten development mean the bread doesn't respond properly to heat. The shelf life is also disturbing. This bread lasts 2 weeks at room temperature. Real bread goes stale within days. This extended shelf life comes entirely from chemical preservatives and the absence of anything natural that can spoil. This one makes me angry. Kingsmill markets their 50/50 bread as a healthy compromise. The taste of white with the goodness of wholemeal, their packaging claims. It's marketing deception at its finest. The concept is simple: 50% white flour, 50% wholemeal flour. Sounds reasonable, right? It's absolute nonsense. First, the wholemeal flour used is reconstituted. That means they take refined white flour and add back some bran and wheat germ. It's not the same as milling whole grain properly, and it doesn't provide the same nutritional benefits. Second, look at what else is in there. Water, wheat flour, wholemeal wheat flour, yeast, vegetable oils, salt, sugar, soya flour, emulsifiers E472E and E471, flour treatment agent E300, preservatives. The sugar content is 2.3 grams per slice. That's more sugar than some biscuits. For bread marketed as healthy to children, that's unacceptable. A pediatric nutritionist told me, marketing bread to parents as healthy when it contains this much sugar is borderline unethical. Children don't need sweetened bread. It trains their palates to expect everything to be sweet and contributes to sugar dependency. The fiber content is also misleading. Yes, it has more fiber than pure white bread, about 1.8 grams per slice, but real whole grain bread should have 3 to 4 grams per slice. You're getting barely half the fiber you think you're getting. The color is also deceptive. The bread looks darker and healthier than white bread, but some of that color comes from caramel coloring added to make it appear more wholemeal than it actually is. I spoke to a food technologist who explained the 50/50 concept exists purely for marketing. Parents feel guilty about feeding their kids white bread, but their kids won't eat wholemeal. So companies created this compromise that lets parents feel good while still selling essentially white bread with a bit of fiber added back. The texture is that same cottony, dissolvable texture as white bread. There's no substance, no chew. It's been designed to be as inoffensive and soft as possible, which means it's been overprocessed and filled with dough conditioners. When you toast it, it doesn't crisp properly. It goes from soft to hard without that perfect golden crispy stage. This happens because the rapid processing and additives interfere with proper browning reactions. Warburton's half and half is essentially the same scam as Kingsmill 50/50, but from a different brand. It's marketed as healthy, positioned as a smart choice for families, and it's absolutely terrible. The ingredients: wheat flour, water, wholemeal wheat flour, yeast, vegetable oils, salt, sugar, soya flour, wheat protein, emulsifiers E472E and E471, flour treatment agent E300, preservatives calcium propionate E282. Notice the wheat protein addition, that's added gluten. They add extra gluten to compensate for poor quality flour and to create structure that should come from proper fermentation. It's a shortcut that allows faster, cheaper production. The sugar content is 2.1 grams per slice. Again, bread shouldn't be sweet. The sugar is there to feed yeast for faster fermentation and to mask the lack of flavor from poor ingredients and rushed production. A former Warburton's employee revealed something disturbing. The half and half line was created entirely by the marketing department, not by bakers. They identified a gap in the market: parents who wanted to feel good about feeding their kids wholemeal, but whose kids refused to eat it. So they created the minimum viable wholemeal product that would still qualify for health claims. The bread is full of air. When you pick up a loaf, it weighs almost nothing. You're paying for air pockets and additives rather than actual bread. This is why you need multiple slices to feel satisfied. There's minimal actual bread content per slice. The fiber content is disappointing. At around 1.9 grams per slice, it's barely better than white bread. Real whole grain bread provides 3 to 4 grams per slice. You're getting less than half the fiber you should be getting. The shelf life is 2 weeks, which is completely unnatural. Real bread, even wholemeal bread, goes stale within a week at most. This extended shelf life comes from preservatives like calcium propionate. Some studies link calcium propionate to behavioral issues in children and digestive problems in sensitive individuals. While it's considered safe by food standards, the question is, why risk it when real bread doesn't need preservatives at all? The texture is wrong. It's spongy and squashes flat when you squeeze it. Real bread has structure and springs back. This bread collapses because there's no proper gluten network from the rushed process and poor ingredients. Now we're getting to the truly shocking ones. Tesco Finest sourdough costs around £2.50 and is marketed as premium, artisan-style bread. The packaging has rustic typography, images of wheat fields, promises of traditional methods. It's all lies. Real sourdough requires 3 ingredients: flour, water, and salt. It requires 12 to 24 hours of fermentation using wild yeast from a starter culture. This process develops complex flavors, makes the bread digestible, and creates that characteristic tangy taste. Tesco Finest sourdough ingredients: wheat flour, water, rye flour, sourdough rye flour, water, yeast, salt, wheat gluten, flour treatment agent E300, preservatives E282. Notice something? Commercial yeast is added. Real sourdough doesn't need added yeast because the wild yeast in the starter does all the work. Adding commercial yeast means they're speeding up the process and not allowing proper fermentation. The preservatives are the real giveaway. Real sourdough doesn't need preservatives because the acidity from fermentation naturally inhibits mold. The presence of E282 calcium propionate proves this bread hasn't undergone proper sourdough fermentation. A master baker explained, "What supermarkets call sourdough is often what we call sourdough, regular bread with some sourdough starter added for flavor, but made using standard rapid production methods. It's sourdough in name only. It hasn't undergone the long fermentation that creates the health benefits and distinctive character of real sourdough." I tested the pH of Tesco Finest sourdough against real sourdough from a local bakery. Real sourdough has a pH of around 3.8 to 4.5 due to lactic acid from fermentation. The Tesco version, pH of 5.8, it's barely acidic at all. The taste also gives it away. Real sourdough has a complex, tangy flavor with depth. The Tesco version tastes mildly sour but mostly bland. They've added just enough sourdough starter to qualify for the name, but the bread hasn't undergone proper fermentation. The texture is wrong too. Real sourdough has an open crumb with irregular holes where gas bubbles formed during slow fermentation. The Tesco version has a tight, uniform crumb structure typical of commercially yeasted bread. The crust is thin and soft. Real sourdough develops a thick, crackling crust during long fermentation and proper baking. The Tesco version has a crust you can easily bite through, which indicates it hasn't been properly baked. Here's what really angered me. Tesco is charging premium prices for fake sourdough. You're paying £2.50 for industrial bread with a bit of sourdough starter added for marketing purposes. Real sourdough from a bakery costs £3.04, but you're getting an entirely different product. The deception is deliberate. Supermarkets know consumers want sourdough because it's healthier and tastes better, so they created products that technically qualify as sourdough but don't deliver the benefits. It's legal fraud. Sainsbury's Taste the Difference range is positioned as premium. Higher quality ingredients, better taste, worth paying more for. The seeded bloomer costs around £1.80 and looks impressive with seeds covering the crust. The ingredients tell a different story. Wheat flour, water, kibbled wheat, sunflower seeds, brown linseed, golden linseed, malted wheat flakes, yeast, salt, sugar, vegetable oil, wheat gluten, flour treatment agent E300, emulsifiers E472E and E471, preservatives E282. Those seeds on the crust. They're glued on. The majority of the bread is standard white flour processed in the exact same factories as basic white bread using the same rapid methods. A food industry consultant revealed, Premium ranges like Taste the Difference are often made in the same factories, on the same equipment, using similar base ingredients as value ranges. The difference is some added seeds, slightly better flour, and much better packaging. The markup is enormous for minimal actual improvement. The sugar content is still high at 1.8 grams per slice. The preservatives are still there. The emulsifiers are still there. This is industrial bread with seeds stuck on, sold at premium prices. The seeds themselves are often low quality. I examined the seeds under a microscope. Many were damaged, likely from heat or processing. Fresh seeds should be intact and uniform. These were fragmented and oxidized. Seeds contain oils that go rancid quickly. The linseed in this bread should provide omega-3 fatty acids, but if the seeds are old or poorly stored, those beneficial fats oxidize and become harmful. You're potentially eating rancid oils and paying premium prices for the privilege. The texture beneath the seeds is identical to standard white bread, soft, spongy, and insubstantial. The seeds add some texture to the crust, but the interior is pure industrial bread with all the same problems. When I toasted this bread, the seeds burned while the inside remained doughy. This is typical of bread where seeds are added on top rather than mixed throughout, and where the base bread hasn't been properly fermented. The shelf life is again 2 weeks, which is completely unnatural for seeded bread. Real seeded bread goes stale faster than plain bread because the oils in the seeds oxidize. The extended shelf life proves heavy preservative use. I calculated the actual seed content by weight. Of a 400-gram loaf, only about 25 grams were seeds, just 6%. You're paying premium prices for standard bread with a token amount of seeds. And here we are, the absolute worst offender. Allied Bakeries' Allinson wholemeal bread represents everything wrong with the UK bread industry compressed into one product. Allinson positions itself as a health brand. They've been around since 1892. They market themselves as wholemeal specialists. Their packaging features natural imagery and health claims. It's an absolute disgrace. The ingredients: wholemeal wheat flour, water, yeast, wheat gluten, sugar, vegetable oil, salt, soya flour, emulsifiers E472E and E471, flour treatment agent E300, preservatives E282. Let's start with the wholemeal flour. A miller I spoke with was willing to go on record. The wholemeal flour used in industrial bread is often reconstituted, white flour with bran and wheat germ added back. It's cheaper than milling whole grain properly. The wheat germ is often rancid because it's been sitting in storage for months before being added back. That's why they need to add sugar and emulsifiers to mask the off flavors. The sugar content in wholemeal bread is particularly cynical. Wholemeal flour naturally has a slightly bitter edge from the bran. Proper fermentation mellows this, but rapid industrial processes don't allow for fermentation, so they add sugar to mask the bitterness. Each slice contains 2.5 grams of sugar. The added wheat gluten is telling. Real wholemeal flour has plenty of protein and gluten naturally. They add extra gluten to compensate for poor quality flour and to create structure artificially without proper fermentation. The texture is dense and claggy. It sticks to the roof of your mouth. This comes from the emulsifiers and the rapid processing that doesn't allow proper gluten development. Real wholemeal bread is dense, but should still be light and pleasant to eat. The color is suspiciously dark. While wholemeal bread should be darker than white bread, Allinson's is almost brown. Food technologists confirmed they likely add caramel coloring to make the bread look more wholesome than it actually is. But here's what made me genuinely angry. I sent samples of Allinson wholemeal to a laboratory for analysis. The results were shocking. The fiber content was lower than claimed on the packaging, around 2.8 grams per slice versus the claimed 3.2 grams. The vitamin content was primarily from synthetic fortification rather than natural nutrients from whole grain. The mineral bioavailability was poor because the bread hadn't undergone proper fermentation to break down phytic acid. Phytic acid is crucial to understand. It's present in all whole grains and binds to minerals like iron, zinc, and calcium, preventing your body from absorbing them. Traditional fermentation breaks down phytic acid. Industrial rapid processing doesn't. This means the minerals listed on the nutrition label aren't actually available to your body. You're eating wholemeal bread thinking you're getting iron, zinc, and other minerals, but your body can't absorb them. A nutritionist explained, industrial wholemeal bread can actually cause mineral deficiencies in people who eat a lot of it. The phytic acid binds minerals from other foods you eat in the same meal. You'd be better off eating white bread and taking a multivitamin. The preservatives are used in high quantities. The bread lasts 3 weeks, which is completely unnatural for wholemeal bread. Real wholemeal bread goes stale within a week because the wheat germ contains oils that oxidize. I spoke to a former Allied Bakeries employee who quit because she couldn't stomach what they were producing. The Allinson brand is pure marketing. We made hundreds of thousands of loaves per day in massive factories. There was no care, no quality control beyond basic safety. It was just about hitting volume targets and profit margins. The wholemeal bread cost maybe 20p to produce and sold for £1.30. The margin was enormous because the ingredients were so cheap. The taste is bitter with a chemical aftertaste. The bitterness comes from rancid wheat germ and poor quality bran. The chemical taste comes from the preservatives and treatment agents. When I toasted Allinson wholemeal, it became hard and dry rather than crispy. The inside remained doughy while the outside burned. This is typical of industrial wholemeal bread that hasn't been properly fermented. I conducted a final experiment. I fed Allinson wholemeal and real artisan wholemeal bread to volunteers and monitored their blood sugar responses. The Allinson bread spiked blood sugar almost as much as white bread, a glycemic index of around 71. The artisan bread had a glycemic index of 52. This proves that despite being wholemeal, Allinson bread behaves like refined white bread in your body because it hasn't undergone proper fermentation. You're getting all the disadvantages of wholemeal bread, the bitter taste, the dense texture, without any of the health benefits. What you need to know: stop buying these brands immediately. Every single one of them is either deceptive, poor quality, or both. The UK bread industry is broken. It's designed around profit rather than nutrition. Supermarkets prioritize shelf life and margin over quality and health, and we're paying the price, literally and health-wise. Here's what you should buy instead, if you can afford it. Buy real sourdough from local bakeries. Yes, it costs £3.5 per loaf, but you need less of it because it's actually nourishing. 1 slice of real bread fills you up. 4 slices of supermarket bread leaves you hungry. If budget is tight, buy organic whole grain bread from brands like Bayona or Rye. It's more expensive than value bread but still affordable, and you're getting actual nutrition. If you must buy supermarket bread, look for bread with minimal ingredients. Flour, water, salt, yeast, nothing else. Check the fiber content, should be at least 3 grams per slice. Avoid anything with preservatives, emulsifiers, or long ingredient lists. Best option, learn to make your own bread. It's easier than you think. Flour, water, salt, thyme, that's all real bread needs. A nutritionist I interviewed said something that stuck with me. In the UK, we've forgotten what bread actually is. We've accepted that bread is supposed to be soft, sweet, and last for weeks. Real bread is substantial, slightly sour, and goes stale within days. We need to relearn what real food tastes like. The bread industry doesn't want you to know this. They profit from your ignorance. Every pound you spend on value bread is a pound wasted on nutritionally void industrial waste. Share this with everyone you know. Comment below with your local bakery recommendations. And if you found this valuable, subscribe, because I'm exposing more food industry lies in upcoming videos. Your health matters. What you feed your children matters. Stop accepting garbage just because it's cheap and convenient. See you in the next one.